Hi, I'm Kenny Joya. Welcome to another one of my tutorials. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use a MIDI controller as a control surface in REAPER. Now, many MIDI controllers that are on the market now have a lot of knobs, faders, or even buttons, and we could use these to control REAPER. Now, a lot of the companies that make these provide drivers or patches, but they don't always make them for REAPER. That doesn't matter. In fact, in some ways it's better, because we can customize it to work the best way for us. The controller I'm using has 8 faders, 8 knobs, and 8 buttons. But don't worry if yours is different. You could have less or more. It's all going to pretty much work the same. So let's start off by going to our preferences. And go to MIDI devices. Right here we're going to turn on our MIDI controller. I'm using this one right here, the M Audio Axiom 49. Right-click it, enable the input for MIDI notes, and also enable it for control messages. These are the messages that REAPER needs to control things as a control surface. Hit OK. And now we're ready to set things up. We're going to do this from the Actions menu. So go to Actions, open up the list, and we're going to type in our filter. We're going to start off with navigating or moving around and choosing different tracks. So we'll start off with previous track. And there's one right here. Go to previous track, we'll hit add, and then we'll choose a button on our controller. I'm going to choose the first one I have, and that's MIDI channel 1, PC 0. Now the MIDI channel is important. We could use this to change the functions of the same button. With 16 different MIDI channels, we could change what the buttons do on the fly. I'll show you that in a bit. For now, we'll stick with MIDI channel 1. So we'll hit OK, and let's set up another one for our next track. Right here, go to next track, hit add. Now I'm going to hit the second button on the MIDI controller. And it shows up right here. Now if we go over here, and notice our tracks, if I hit those buttons on the MIDI controller, it's going to change the track selection for next or for previous. And that's going to help us with this next part as we set up a fader. So let's change our filter to track volume. We'll scroll down here to set volume for selected tracks. Hit add, and then I'll move the first fader on the MIDI controller. Now, if you only have one, that's okay. It's still going to do a lot. So I'll move it, and it shows up MIDI channel 1, continuous controller, number 74. We'll use absolute, which is going to use the full range of that fader, and we'll leave this off for now. Soft takeover, I'll explain that in a bit. And now with this track selected, if I move the fader, it adjusts the volume. And using those keys to change our track changes what track it affects. Now, if you don't have buttons to change tracks, that's okay. You can use the key command that's right over here, or you can just click the tracks. Just click them, move your fader, and it adjusts the tracks that are selected. In fact, because of temporary grouping, you could select many tracks, and they're going to work together as a temporary group. Let's clear the one we just set up, and let's set it up again. Move the fader, but this time, I'm going to choose the option right here, Soft Takeover. This is going to behave a bit differently. Let me show you. If I move this fader to the bottom, then if I go to the next track, it's not going to affect it or move the volume unless we meet up or cross to this volume right here. So I'm going to move the fader right now. See what doesn't move? I'm actually moving the fader. But if I get high enough where it touches it or meets up, it then grabs it and then moves. That's what's known as soft takeover. It prevents the fader from moving or jumping too quickly from where your MIDI controller fader is to the new track's fader that you just selected. Watch again. If I grab this, put it to the top, and if I grab this one, it doesn't do anything until I cross this path. I'm moving it right now, move it down. As soon as it reaches that point, it grabs it. So it makes it less jarring. It doesn't jump from one level to the other. The other way, with this turned off, it's going to move no matter what. So it'll jump very quickly. Watch. See how it jumped? But it's really a personal preference. And for me, I prefer to leave it off. But feel free to use it if you prefer the other behavior. So let's set up some other things. Let's set up a mute. And we're going to choose this one right here, mute and unmute tracks. So it's going to toggle with one button. If we choose this one, it's just going to mute. It's not going to unmute. So we'll choose this, hit add, hit a button. I'm going to use my third button because I used the first two buttons for previous track and next track. Now if I select this track, hit that button, it mutes. Jump around to the next track, same thing. And again, you can do multiple tracks by selecting them all, hit that button, and it mutes them as a temporary group. Let's create another button for solo. Choose this option right here, solo, unsolo tracks. Again, it's going to toggle. Hit add, hit my fourth button. Now if I select this track, hit the fourth button, it's going to solo. So I can jump around and solo tracks very easily. Or mute them, or adjust their volume. All using the MIDI keyboard. So I don't have to go back to the computer keyboard to do these things. And you can set these buttons up to do many different things. I have 4 other buttons that I haven't even used. Let's use them for automation. Right here, we could set track automation to write. I'm going to use my 5th button. I could select this track, hit that button, I'm in write mode. Or touch mode. I'll use my 6th button. I could switch this to touch mode. Or back to write. Let's make one for trim. I'll use a 7th one. Now we can switch our modes right from our MIDI keyboard or controller. Back to trim, go into write, or touch, or back to trim. So we can automate right from the keyboard. Let's go to write mode. Let's grab our fader and start writing automation. Hit play. And we can automate our tracks right from our MIDI keyboard. But let's set it up a different way. And we're going to do this on a different MIDI channel. Let's go back to our actions. And in our filter, let's choose track volume again. We'll scroll down. And instead of using this one, let's use this one. Set volume for track 1. Now this is fixed. It's based on track 1 in our project. This one right here. This one is based on selected tracks, so it changes. But if you have more faders, you might want to use them at the same time. Like I said earlier, I have 8. So we could set this up on a different MIDI channel. So I'll go to the MIDI controller and change the MIDI channel to channel 2. Now I'll choose this one, hit add, move my first fader, and now it shows up MIDI channel 2, controller 74. Now if I move that fader, it just moves track 1. Even if I select track 2, track 1 always moves. So it's dedicated. But again, it's only because my controller is set to MIDI channel 2. If I move it back, now that fader is based on selected tracks, which is right here. Channel 1, Channel 2. But let's set the rest of them up so we can use many faders at the same time. Let's go to this one. Move my second fader. So now my second fader is going to affect this track. So I can adjust 2 of them at the same time. Let's do the first 8. And to do it quicker, let's use the feature right here. Automatically close window on key or MIDI input. So if we hit this, as soon as I move my fader, it automatically closes. So I can quickly add the rest. And now I've set up all 8 of them. So watch over here. I can grab any of them or all of them and control 8 faders at the same time. So if you're working on a small project with only a few tracks, maybe 8 or less, these 8 faders become your mixer. Now if you have more tracks, we could adjust that with different MIDI channels. We can go to MIDI channel 3 on our MIDI controller and go down over here to track 9 through 16 and do the same thing. And now using MIDI channel 3 over here, we can control tracks 9 through 16. I'm only using 15 right now, but you get the idea. So if I move it, I'm controlling 9 through 16. Or if I go back to MIDI channel 2, I'm controlling those tracks instead. 1 through 8. Now dealing with a project with many tracks, it might be hard to keep up, to figure out which track you're grabbing. So in those situations, I go back to MIDI channel 1. This way I can just select tracks and move those faders, or mute, or solo, a lot easier. But if you're dealing with a small project, you can do it this way instead. We can also set up our knobs to be used as pans. Let's do that. We'll go to track pan, right here, set pan for selected tracks. Now I'm still in MIDI channel 1, hit add, let's turn this off, move that knob, and it shows up right here, MIDI channel 1, controller 75. So now whatever track we choose, let's choose this one, I could use that knob to change the pan. Select a different track, and pan that one, and so on. Now my controller has 8 knobs, so I could set it up using 1 through 8 like we did before, or I could set up those knobs to do anything I want. And that's one of the great things about working with Reaper. Any of these knobs or buttons or faders can be completely customized. And by changing our MIDI controller to use different MIDI channels, 1 through 16, we can set up different presets for each channel. So all of our faders, buttons, and knobs are multiplied by 16. And when you're done, you could save all this stuff right here. You could export all, which you can do all your key commands in addition to the control messages, or you can separate it. We can go over here, list it by shortcut, and just choose the ones we want to save. Let's select all these up to here, export, and we can export just the selected items. So we can save just the control commands that we set up. And we can bring them back in by importing them right here. So it's a good idea when you set it up to then back it up so you don't lose it, or you can carry it around when you go to other studios. So that's pretty much it. That's using a MIDI controller as a control surface in Reaper. I hope you learned something, I hope you can use it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.